This review is of the Grand Oriental Chinese restaurant in Cincinnati. It's on Fields Airtel Road, 6900. It's actually on a side street off of Fields Airtel Road. It's an uncontrolled intersection, so when it's busy, it's hard to turn onto it to the right, and it's extremely hard to turn. Not hard to turn on it from the right. From it. When you're leaving and you want to get back onto Fields Airtel, it's pretty hard to get on that Fields Airtel Road. When you want to turn from the opposite side of the road to get in there from the left, if you're turning left, it is really, really difficult because it's uncontrolled and people kept on blocking the intersection. And then when you try it's difficult. That's all I need to say, really. So it's kind of set back a little bit. It is a very nice-looking restaurant. It has a fair amount of parking space, although I think it's kind of stretched out, so some of it's not quite as close. However, I didn't have any trouble finding a parking spot very close to the doors. And the first thing you notice is the decorations are really, really nice. Lots of wood, lots of Chinese art, and so on and so forth. So it really looks quite nice. So you sit down. The seats are covered with plastic, and which is cracked. But they use real cloth napkins and so on and. So as far as the visuals, it's impressive. In Indonesia, we have a saying, or they have a saying, I should say, and that is that the crappier the restaurant looks, the better the food will be. And, it's the philosophy that the more money you spent on the decorations, the less money you have available to make good food. I don't know if that's always true, but it certainly is sometimes true. So you could describe it as fine dining because it looks very nice. Now, as far as service is concerned, we had some good things and some bad things about it. The waitress we had was a very young lady who looked Chinese. She spoke like she had grown up here, however, and she did okay, but she didn't know the ingredients of the things on the menu. So she had to bring in one of the owners who very politely and kindly made recommendations and answered our questions about the ingredients. And that was, it was nice to talk to him. He did a great job. Unfortunately, when she brought the water over to the table, I took one of the 3 glasses away from her because, she has small hands, and I felt bad for her. So she only had 2 glasses in her hands, one in each hand, right? She still managed to spill on my phone. Yeah. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to yell, but I was not happy that she spilled on my phone. Fortunately, my phone is still alive. It still works. Also, and I'm not sure if this is the kitchen's fault or whose fault this is, but the food was brought out in a very one-by-one odd way. So first my son's spring roll came out, and then I believe my scallion pancakes came out, if I remember correctly, after a wait of several minutes. After he got his spring roll. And then I believe my Chinese vegetable soup came after a while. And then after a while, his wonton soup came. And trying to think if there's anything else. Nope. We still sat there. We'd been there for at least half an hour. And my sister, who had ordered crab rangoon, still hadn't received her crab rangoon. Now, crab rangoon is not hard to make, nor is it hard to cook. You just put a dollop of the cream cheese and crab stuff on the wonton skin. You fold the wonton skin in the typical shape, and then you dunk it in the deep fryer for several seconds, and you're done. Bob's your uncle, as they say in some places. And she finally had to say to the waitress that she had not yet received her crab rangoon, at which point the crab rangoon rapidly came out. But that was disappointing. When we received the food, it was a little bit more organized. At the end, when we were going to leave, my son and I walked into the lobby, and my sister, who was paying for our breakfast, for our food because it was a double birthday celebration, she went to the cash register where one of the other owners was standing, and that owner took care of her, and then he walked away, which I was like, okay. So then we stood by this really nice ornate carving on the wall to take a photograph together. And my sister turned to a guy who was just kind of standing off to the side of the cash register area. And she asked him if he could take a photograph of us, and he declined. And then he kind of angrily said that he had been waiting to pay his bill when she just stepped in front of him. And she didn't know that. She apologized, of course. It was not intentional, and it kind of highlights the fact that the other owner that was at the cash register walked away without taking care of that guy. Now, maybe it was because imagine here is this area where the cash register is located on a counter, and then to the right of that, over here, is area for people to sit while they're waiting to be seated. And he was standing basically just on this side of that imaginary border between those two areas, instead of standing in front of the cash register so it would be clear why he was there. I mean, when I saw him standing there, I thought he was waiting to be seated. And so I had no idea either that he was there to pay his bill. Yeah, so partially his fault, I think, partially their fault for not asking why he was standing there. Because when the man saw my son and I approaching my sister, he thought we were customers and wanted to be seated, and he asked how many, so he was attentive to us, but he didn't attend to the man standing off to the side, and again, partially the guy's fault, because he was too far off to the side. And I understand why he was frustrated, but if you want to pay the bill, you stand in front of the cash register, not off to the side, like 6 feet away. So that's that. I didn't go into the bathroom, so I cannot give you an honest opinion of the bathroom. Sorry about that. I know that people watch my videos so they can learn about bathrooms. Sorry. I'll do better next time. And finally, the food. So let's talk about the food. So I don't have a photograph of everything, but I do have a photograph of some things, including, and I will show you these photographs, my sister's crab rangoon, which, before I start describing the food, I need you to understand that Cantonese food tends to be on the bland side. They don't use a lot of spices. So perhaps, and I'm not sure, you might find that if you need less sodium in your diet, this would be a good choice for you to eat the Cantonese food. But yeah. And that was the overarching impression that we got from eating there, is that Cantonese food is kind of bland. So with that having been said, my sister's crab rangoon looked very nice, even though it took them forever to get it out to the table because they completely forgot about it. However, I took a little piece of it, and when I bit into it, I was like, oh, it was fairly sweet. I've never had crab rangoon with anything approaching that amount of sugar in it, and it was a turnoff for me. And I did ask the owner that had given us help with the menu items if it was typical of the crab rangoon to be sweet, and he said yes, at least here. So I don't know. I guess that's their house recipe. I guess Americans are so used to eating excessive amounts of sugar that they think that tastes good, but to me it doesn't. And then my son's spring roll was not cooked to a golden brown color. It was cooked to a medium brown color, so it was rather dark, which surprised me. Kind of like not like dark medium, but more of a light medium. But the skin was very crisp, and the inside was nice and soft and well cooked, and it had a mildly pleasant flavor. I had my scallion pancakes, I should say. Now, in Korea, they call them panjeon. And I recently, a week ago, I was in a Korean restaurant called Biwon Korean restaurant in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I had scallion pancakes or panjeon there, and they were very good. These pancakes, however, were they barely qualified as scallion pancakes, because although you could see you could barely see, you could clearly see scallions cooked into it, and fresh scallions on top just a little bit. You really barely tasted them. On top of that, they were extremely oily and thin and a little bit hard to cut with my fork, and even with my fork and knife. So, no, I didn't care for that. Certainly would go, I'd much rather travel a couple of hours up to Michigan by airplane and get the panjeon up there than to get the panjeon at the Grand Oriental Chinese restaurant. All right, then, let's see. My son's Chinese wonton soup. I did taste a bit of that, and it was nice, it was pleasant, not strong flavor, but a pleasant flavor. The broth was chicken broth, and I told my son that, and he was like, because he was trying to avoid eating meat, but he ended up having that broth, so he was not happy. And then, let's see, so we got, finally, my soup, which was Chinese vegetable soup. And I don't think I've ever necessarily had this particular recipe before, but it's got like carrots and mushrooms and water chestnuts and, let's see, what else? Napa cabbage, broccoli, is it sugar snap? The Chinese pea pods, snow pea pods maybe, and I think that's it. And that also tasted like it was in chicken broth, mildly flavored. So the dominant flavor in every bite was whatever vegetables were in my mouth at the time, which is okay. And I love eating vegetables. They just weren't special. It wasn't a special soup. It wasn't, they probably weren't organic. So yeah, it was just okay. And so let's see, that's all of the appetizers then. And that leaves us with the main meals that each of us had. My sister had chicken mifun, and it was like angel hair pasta, which it's not. I think it's like so'un in Indonesia. I always get confused between so'un and bihun, or maybe it's bihun. But basically, it's rice noodles that are not clear or translucent. They're white. And so that had chicken and eggs, carrots, scallions, broccoli, and maybe some other stuff in there. Not too much of it, though. And I tried that. It was okay. Again, kind of subdued flavor. Nothing special. Then my son's shrimp lo mein. I tried that. It was okay. I've had better. Again, it was mild tasting. And it didn't have very much in the way of vegetables in it. Both of hers and his had a little bit of bean sprouts, some nice fresh large shrimp, maybe medium I guess, but they were well cooked and fresh. Little julienne carrots and maybe some onion. And it was okay, but my son was not happy with it, so he put a bunch of soy sauce on it, and he's a bit obsessed with soy sauce. And finally, I had something that I've never eaten before, so I really can't compare it to anything that I've had in the past at Chinese restaurants. It's called Hong Sui tofu. And this is tofu with vegetables. The tofu is cut into a rectangular shape, about yay long, and fried. And it's in a brown sauce that's supposed to be spicy. There was almost no spiciness to it, and not so much flavor either, although it was certainly probably the best of the three as far as flavor is concerned. It had Napa cabbage, Chinese pea pods, mushrooms, carrots, and water chestnuts. I think that's it. And yeah, it was okay. I mean, nothing special, but I managed to finish it off and leave without feeling too full. Or actually, I felt just a little bit hungry after eating an appetizer or soup and a main meal with rice. Yeah, so my ultimate impression was exactly what you would expect from Cantonese food, a little bit on the bland side. So for me personally, from the perspective of health, it's a good place to go because they're using less salt. But from the perspective of the kind of flavor I expect from Chinese food, especially if I order something spicy, which this was not. I mean, this was like so minimally piquant that I could barely taste it. I wouldn't want to go back. It's a little bit expensive for the flavor, the quality of the flavor that you get. And of course, the service was kind of hit or miss, but it's very beautiful, and the people were nice. So, I would love to find a Chinese place that doesn't rely heavily on salt and makes things from scratch, and so I know that I'm going to get a flavorful dish that isn't going to destroy my heart with salt and sodium. But I don't know where that is. In any event, I'll give it a 4. If you like somewhat bland food, or you need to have a lower sodium count in your food, this is definitely a place that you should consider if you're in Cincinnati. But for me, And that's it. So, afia to you, my viewers. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. I need to ask for your help. Things have been challenging. Whose life hasn't been challenging lately? So if you can please help me out by liking, subscribing, sharing, commenting, and turning on notifications, that would be really, really super. Also, if you'd like to help me financially and you can't afford to, you can do a super thanks on my Glenn's Fast Reviews channel, or you can become a member there. Or if you prefer, you can go to patreon.com/GLENNMII and become a member there instead.